Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. It's a pleasure and an honor. And Axiom is very excited to be a participant in tonight's event. Upstairs on the fourth floor, when you start wandering around, you will see our space suit, or my space suit actually, not space suit, flight suit. For my role as a flight surgeon on our most recent mission, Axiom 3, that flew and landed early this year, launched in January and landed in February. We are a company that is providing commercial space services to the International Space Station, designing the next generation of low Earth orbit space stations, the Axiom Station. The first module will launch in 2026, and designing the suit that Jeremy Hansen wears, or the Artemis astronauts will wear when they return to the moon on Artemis 3. So I'm going to give you an overview, having followed along with Dr. Bim's how we got to where we are. I'm going to give you the where we're going next in space with the advent of commercial space. So what I want you to see here are the dates. Don't pay too much attention necessarily to the events, but look at the trajectory of these dates, right? 2020 or 2010 to 2015 to 2018. And then we start seeing multiple events in the years after that, right? There are multiple events in 2020, multiple events in 2021, even more events in 2022. So we're hitting a breaking point in the curve where we're now starting to go exponential in terms of the number of events and the number of firsts that are occurring.
Our online viewers on YouTube can't hear you.
All right. Perfect. So what we are seeing here is that the frequency with which spaceflight is launching from American soil and doing so with non-traditional commercial astronauts is increasing, and will only continue to do so as we gather more and more experience. Since 2020, you've seen numerous launches with humans on board in commercial vehicles, with Demo 2 through SpaceX and NASA, and we're already on Crew 8. And there's an exhibit upstairs with Dr. Mike Barrett's picture. He's a member of Crew 8 and currently on board the International Space Station. So we've done 4 missions in that 4-year, or 8 missions in that 4-year time period. Axiom has done 3 missions with our crews. And some of the things that our crews are doing are pretty exciting. I'm going to show you some of those slides. There have been a number of firsts that have occurred in those 4 years since 2020. We've launched the first commercial mission with all private astronauts that was docked and spent 14 days in the International Space Station. We've had the first commercial mission that's been commanded by a female commander. We've introduced new countries to the advent of spaceflight. Turkey flew on AX-3. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia flew on AX-2 and brought the first female Saudi astronaut into the space race. There have been private missions that have had repeat flyers, and you can see that when social media got a hold of Mike Lopez Alegria's flight on AX-3, they had some fun in terms of how they represented it, but he was the first repeat flyer on the Dragon. And so it was a reused rocket with a reused capsule with a reused commander, according to the folks on Facebook. But very, very exciting. We flew an agency astronaut in Marcus Vaughn through ESA, flew with us on AX-3 as well. So a number of firsts, and there are going to be more firsts over the next 5, 10, 20 years. So it will be very, very exciting to watch. Our mission at Axiom is to build for beyond. And so these are our mission statements and our visions. We want to make space accessible for all, and we want to make the endeavors that we accomplish while we're up there have benefit for humanity here on Earth globally, so that everybody can experience the benefits of spaceflight. And you got a history lesson from Dr. Bim about some of those things that we have done in the past and how they've come back to benefit human spaceflight. So over the next 20 years, what we do through commercial space and low Earth orbit is going to have a big impact on folks here. And as a physician unbiased, I'm hoping that has a big impact on health and healthcare provision here on Earth. So we're going through a 3-pronged phase. And so we are currently transitioning between phase 1 into phase 2 right now at Axiom. That we have done our private astronaut missions. We've done 3. We've got the 4th one lined up for later this year. And we plan to do more beyond that. We're also building the first commercial space station. And we will fly the first module of that in 2026, attach it to the ISS, and then continue to build on using the support of the ISS. When the ISS is decommissioned, then we will separate, and we will have a free-flying space station that then becomes a platform for countries and organizations around the world to use it for our benefit. And that can be research and science, and that can also be manufacturing. The sky's the limit, pardon the pun, in terms of what your imagination is and what the benefit of operating and performing in a microgravity environment can provide in terms of either efficiency, advances, and again, they have benefits for folks here on Earth. We have a display upstairs on our spacesuit, so I encourage you to go read that closer instead of spending a whole lot of time with the eye chart here. But this is the Artemis suit that we are going to provide to NASA no later than August of 2025 for them to use for the Artemis missions returning to the moon. It's the first time in 40 years that the spacesuit has been redesigned. And so you can imagine the technological advances that have occurred in that 40-year period that we are now incorporating into our spacesuit. If you watched the unveiling of the suit about a year ago, you heard the oohs and the ahs in the audience when you watched the person inside do a demonstration to reach up above their head. That level of shoulder mobility has not been possible inside of a spacesuit until now. So things like that are extremely exciting. The missions that we've flown to date, I'm proud of this one in particular as a Canadian, because as you can see, there's a Canadian flag on the mission patch. Mark Pathy, Canadian resident of Montreal, Quebec, was one of the first crew members on board this mission. And you can see a number of partners. So they went up and they performed a great number of science experiments and payloads and research endeavors and science outreach and motivated children around the world. And they did that for a number of partners. Some of them you can see some Canadian content on there, the Canadian Space Agency, McGill University, University of British Columbia in Calgary, Western University in Ontario. There was an Israeli crew member on board as well, Eitan Stidi, who had a similar outreach and impact on the country of Israel. And it was the first time that Israel had returned to space since the Columbia mission that ended in disaster, unfortunately, in 2003. So we are inspiring other countries and getting other folks involved in the space game. This is AX2, where we started to transition to flying governmental astronauts. And so the model of just ultra-high net worth individuals being the only ones that can benefit from commercial space is not what we're doing. We're providing opportunities for new countries and new governments to create space programs and to do so with their own interests at heart. And so the research that we performed on this flight was heavily influenced by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and their priorities. And you can see a number of partners there. Again, we continue the pattern, 20 STEAM outreach events, a number of science payloads that were performed. And again, we introduced a new individual, a new first to space with, you can see here, Ray Barnawi was the first female from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to fly to space. The mission was commanded by Peggy Whitson. As I mentioned, it was the first commercial mission with a female commander. Peggy Whitson is a legend in spaceflight, having a very extensive and very successful career at NASA. So we really get to work alongside individuals such as this. This was AX3, our third mission, that launched in January and landed in February. And in this case, we moved to all governmental astronauts. So the Republic of Turkey had a selection campaign that we participated in, and they selected their first two astronauts. One flew on this mission, and the other is going to fly next week on Virgin Galactic's last flight with their current spaceship, G7. And so you'll meet Tuba El-Tasiver as the next first into space from Turkey. In LA, was also a NASA astronaut. Michael Gonzalez was the commander, and was the first person to repeat flying on the drag. Elber Cezrabci in the middle from Turkey. And then from Italy, we had Walter Billigan, who flew as a member of the Italian Air Force. So again, more firsts and more new horizons in terms of what a commercial astronaut might look like. And you can see again, we've got a long list of partners in which we engage in research, outreach events, and motivational events for children around the world. So what we're doing in terms of supporting these folks as a medical department in a commercial space organization is we're working off of this matrix. This is a traditional matrix that you'll see at an aerospace medicine presentation, where we have a look at physiology and the environment. And in most cases, we are sending people with very normal physiology traditionally, right? The astronauts that were selected as part of the Mercury 7 and every astronaut selection campaign since then at NASA, they're selecting folks who are very healthy, they're buying down risk, so they're doing that intentionally, right? When you get 12,000 applications for 8 positions, you're going to pick the best, and that's across the board, including from a health perspective. So we have traditionally spent very normal physiology into the abnormal environment of space, whether it's the extremes in temperature, the lack of gravity, the pockets of CO2 because of the changes in the way air convects in the microgravity environment, the hypobaric environments that they go through to get there to go the door into a spacewalk. So we've been very careful in terms of who we've selected to do that. What we're doing at Axiom Space is we're trying to expand that. 30% of the population has got mental health disorders. Diabetes is incredibly prevalent, but nobody with diabetes has ever flown into space. If you look at some of the selection criteria for some of the professional astronaut organizations, you'll see things like asthma on there as a disqualification. And from a commercial space perspective, that's unacceptable. That's something that we can accept the challenge of coming up with a way to make it space accessible to folks like that. So it used to be how healthy you have to be to go to space to be selected for that opportunity. Through commercial space and Axiom Space in particular, we're asking the question of how sick can you be and still go to space and do so in a safe way. And so that's where we come in. And some of the technology that has been developed in support of spaceflight up until now will be the backbone of what we do. But now we're going to start iterating upon that and taking advantage of being a commercial organization. We can be nimble, and we can be inventive, and we can be quick in terms of how we iterate and make advances. So this is one of my favorite pictures of me with my 3 children. And this was the night that Crew 1 launched. So the very first long duration flight on the International Space Station at the time I was under contractor for another space company. But my daughter, you see there, is wearing a sleeper that looks like the Dragon spacesuit. And she's the one that's super excited about space. It was probably one of the first words, space. But for my kids, this is going to become normal. And for our children and our grandchildren, spaceflight is going to become as routine as getting on board an airliner and flying across the country or across the world on vacation. And that is an extremely exciting thing, and that is not that far off. I hope that we will be able to see that in the next 10, 20, 40, 50 years. So that is coming, and that is what commercial space is doing, and the benefit will be felt by all of us. Thank you.